Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a last week in BookTube episode? This is a feature that I've done on this channel from time to time. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. I've heard quite a lot from quite a few of you that you've enjoyed it as well. One notorious time it got me into a lot of trouble, but it's mostly been very enjoyable. And it reflects the fact that I watch a lot of BookTube in any given week. A lot of BookTube, hundreds and hundreds of videos, and keep up with them. I don't do as good a job as I want to in leaving comments. I always like the videos from the channels that I watch, but comments mean a lot. They are a dialogue, and I'm a big fan of dialogue, so I should do better about that in 2023, but I watch a lot. And in Last Week in BookTube, when I make these kinds of videos, I give you a rundown of some of the things I watch, not in any way a comprehensive look at everything. There is a lot of really good stuff that I'm sure I will not mention in these videos that I'll overlook completely or whatever. So I thought I would try that again for 2023 and see if maybe we can get through the whole year of doing Last Week in BookTube without causing me to be hashtagged. That would be great. What a victory that would be. So we'll do 3 broad general categories: news, reviews, and must-views. And we'll start with BookTube news. And this particular video is the first Last Week in BookTube of 2023, so it's going to look at longer than just a week. Next time, if I do this next week I will be very punctilious. It will be just the videos that appeared in the 7 days between Monday and Monday. But for this particular Last Week in BookTube, we have to start off for the news section with bad news. The channel Pax Panic, which a lot of you will know, got a horrible medical diagnosis, a diagnosis of cancer. And Mr. Morningstar put up a GoFundMe, created a GoFundMe to help with the expenses of that. And the one silver lining of all of this, that's of course terrible, terrible news. We can hope for the best, right? The best can definitely be hoped for in this case. The one silver lining is that our little community here has rallied around the cause. That GoFundMe is going to be it's going to make a huge difference. So I will leave a link to Pax Panic's channel in case you're not familiar with it. And I'll leave a link to the GoFundMe as well. If you have, an extra $5, an extra $10 kicking around that would otherwise go to coffee or something, this is a worthy cause. And the thing about a GoFundMe, the thing about a campaign like this is that the old saying is true: every little bit helps. So I'll leave a link to both of those below. Then we can move on to events. Of course, with the new year starting, a lot of people have announced events. There are quite a few of those that I want to get through this time around. I'll leave links, if I remember, I'll leave links to everything that's pertinent down below. Like, for instance, the Bookish Princess announced Febregency. Febregency is an event for celebrating the Regency era. The plays, the musicals, the books, the authors, the trends, the history, the whatnot. Her announcement video has to be seen to be believed, so I'll leave a link to it. Also, Revenant Reads is hosting a new event this year, a year-long event. He didn't learn from the original book trek. He's a fan of long book events, and this one's a winner. It's clearly caught on. It's clearly struck a good nerve with a lot of people. Historathon, where he shines light on the reading of works of history and breaks up the year according to different time periods for you to guide your reading, although any history would do. I'll leave a link to his announcement video, even though it's not a 2023 video, just so that you can see, get the general breakdown of the thing. Same thing with Richardson Reads. Mark Richardson of Richardson Reads is doing the Great Pirate Project, and likewise, he made an announcement video last year that I'll leave a link to in this video, because the Great Pirate Project is going on. I'll also link, Shawn Standfast just did a video where he chimes in on the Great Pirate Project, and it's delightful. So I'll leave a link to both of those. Do we have any other events that we're dealing with here? well, probably there are lots and lots of other events, but we'll just leave it at Historathon, Febregency, and the Great Pirate Project for this time around. I also wanted to mention that Tom L.A. Books, will be known to you for having done the greatest of all BookTube playlists. It's the greatest of all BookTube playlists, where he takes us through Dante's Divine Comedy, canto by canto, with commentary, and it's amazing. And he has recently started doing a series of videos circling around, meditating on, talking about Dante in Italian. So those of you who know Italian, feel free to tune into those. I'll leave a link to one of the later ones. Then the next batch that we'll do for news are videos where people do the two predictable things that you do at the beginning of any year. No matter what you're doing, no matter what you're involved in, it doesn't have to be books. You look back on the previous year and summarize it, and you look forward to the new year and make some plans or some resolutions. And a whole bunch of booktubers, far more than I'm listing here, a whole bunch of booktubers did both of those things. So I want to mention just a few. Karl Anderson makes some 2023 reading resolutions, as does Britta Bohler. I'll leave links to both of theirs. Sue's Book Nook looks back at 2022, and a whole bunch of other BookTube channels did likewise. The Library of Allenxandria, the Brothers Gwynne, Mike's Book Reviews, fully booked. Fantastic nonfiction look at 2022. And many, many others. But those are the ones that, when I was making this list, they were sort of stuck out in my mind as ones that I really enjoyed. So, and a number of these people, the Brothers Gwynne did multi-part retrospectives on the books of 2022. So if you go to their channel, for instance, you'll be able to root around and find a bunch of other retrospectives on 2022. Same thing with the Library of Allenxandria. He also did the same thing. He not only did a kind of a favorites video about his reading in 2022, but he also did a tier ranking of all the books that he read in 2022. And a lot of these other channels have done likewise. They've done multiple videos on the subject. So, and then to finish up with the news section of this tentative prototype last week in BookTube, another great piece of news is that the author, Troy Tradup, has joined BookTube. No idea how long he'll stay. I hope it's a nice long stay. I hope that he's warmly welcome. I'll leave a link to his channel. He's written a few books and is a frequent commenter. If you have a BookTube channel, he may have commented on one of your videos. He's decided to join us, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. So I'll leave a link to his new channel down below. Then we move on to reviews. Now, I confess at the outset here, I'm going to keep reviews as a regular part of Last Week in BookTube, but I confess what I've confessed on this channel many, many times before, which is that my relationship with actual standalone formal book reviews on BookTube, where you would think it would be a natural environment, my relationship with those standalone formal book reviews on BookTube has always been really, really iffy. I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's just that when it comes to book reviews, as opposed to anything else, my ideas are firmly planted in the past. Where when I think of a book review, I think of a written thing in a newspaper. a thing that has an editor, a thing that has a certain length that's not long, a thing that does certain things and is supposed to do certain things well. I just recently did a video on some of those things. The negative way, the invidious way to say what I'm trying to say here is that I almost never see book reviews done well on BookTube. Instead, what I see done over and over again really well are book reactions, book responses. Here's this thing that I read. I'm titling this video a book review, but what follows is not actually a book review. I'm not going to tell you much about the book under review. I'm not even going to bother to make myself fully conversant in the details of the book under review. I'm going to get character names wrong. I'm going to know that I'm getting them wrong, and I'm going to say in the video that I've called a review, well, I could be wrong about that. I think it's Marjorie, but it could be Maisie. Imagine for a minute if you opened an issue of the New York Times or the Washington Post or Vanity Fair or the Atlantic Monthly, and you turned to the back to the book reviews, and a book review, you read that in a written book review. You'd be horrified. You wouldn't finish reading. You'd assume that the thing got into print by accident. Maybe that kind of a reaction on my part is the problem that I have with reviews, with videos that call themselves reviews on BookTube. I usually think of those videos when I see them as responses. I'm going to hold up and I'm going to think about this individual book, but what I'm going to call a book review would not pass muster in any book review section anywhere in the world of actual formal book reviews, the things that I have a whole bookcase full here. I don't know if that's the reason why I have such a dodgy relationship with book review videos. On BookTube, you'll notice I don't ever do them on this channel. And I guess that's because maybe I'm thinking that on some level the very venue of BookTube is inhospitable to a book review. Because I think of a book review as a written form of expression. I think of it as, you couldn't write a novel on BookTube either, right? I think of it as having a particular venue of expression. It's a form of writing. It's a form of composition. It's not a talk. So when we get to the review section of every last week in BookTube, I won't offer a 20-minute long throat clearing disclaimer every single week, I promise. But for this inaugural 2023 episode, I wanted to mention that there's almost scare quotes around the word almost. And the reason I say almost is because I don't want to in any way disparage the videos that I'm talking about, all of which are really good conversations about the book the video person is talking about. I don't think I explained that very well, but you have all seen, many of you have seen, many of you make BookTube book reviews. You know, you're familiar with the kind of video that calls itself that, so we'll just go with that. I just wanted to mention this first time that I have reservations with that term, but I'm perfectly willing to accept that BookTube is using that a term that just happens to be the same one as what I do for a living to mean something different than what I do for a living. That wasn't very clarifying, was it? Well, anyway, I've only got 3 videos to mention in this regard anyway. Brian Lee Durfee reviewed The Lonesome Gods by Louis L'Amour. He was really interesting about it. The Lonesome Gods is one of my favorite Louis L'Amour novels, not just because it's really long, but also because I think there's something to it. I think it's more grounded and considered than a lot of his other books, most of which feel like first drafts. Very good first drafts. Keep in mind, a story told around a campfire is a first draft. They're very good first drafts, but a lot of them don't read like The Lonesome Gods. So I was happy to see it get some attention. That's the only review, the only consideration, the only conversation about The Lonesome Gods that I've ever seen on BookTube. Then Sages and Pages reviewed Did Jesus Exist by Bart Ehrman. Bart Ehrman is a famous writer on religion, on Christianity. And in this book, he takes on the historicity of Jesus. Because there's a whole camp of scholars who say that Jesus Christ did not actually exist in history. That he is largely a literary and especially religious construction. And Bart Ehrman goes through, he works over all of the mysticist arguments and all of the dissents to those arguments and whatnot. And Pages and Sages reviews the book and goes over all of those arguments as well. And it's fascinating. No matter what you think of the subject one way or another, it's fascinating. So if you haven't read the book, or even if you have, you're going to love this discussion of it. My own reactions to Bart Ehrman's book, people, I think, on the subject of the historicity of Jesus tend to forget, or willfully forget, that the New Testament, the documents contained in the New Testament, have been the intellectual possession of the Christian church for 2,000 years. Shaped by that church, written by that church, edited by that church, dissenting accounts were not only stripped out of what we now consider the New Testament, but the people who proposed those accounts were stripped right out of the living world, feet first. the huge, we can see even in the Acts of the Apostles that there were huge sects of Christianity about which we know almost nothing, except that they fundamentally disagreed with Paul, with St. Paul. A lot of those Christians were killed by other Christians. My point being that my point is very simple. Bart Ehrman doesn't agree with it. Obviously, a huge part of his book could be dismissed right out the window if he did. And Sages and Pages doesn't appear to agree with it either. But my point is, when it comes to proving the historicity of Jesus Christ, to proving that Jesus Christ existed in history, you cannot use the New Testament. You can't use a single thing in the New Testament, not a single bit, not a phrase, not a single document. It has been in sole possession for 2,000 years of a gigantic and powerful body that reveres the subject of Jesus Christ as the Son of God, as an object of worship. If you can acknowledge that fact, then you have to acknowledge that the works underpinning that faith cannot be trusted as historical documents. Plain and simple. They simply can't be. You have to dismiss all the documents in the New Testament before you construct a case for the historical Jesus. And if you do that, the historical Jesus disappears like a soap bubble. I'm not talking about crowds in Galilee and miracles that may have been witnessed by a few thousand illiterate people. Although those crowds after a while, in Mark, in Matthew, those crowds after a while were attracting very wealthy and literate people who could easily have written letters about them. No one did. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the ministry. I'm talking about the passion. I'm talking about Jerusalem and events that took place in Jerusalem when Jerusalem was home to 10, maybe 15 working historians. Not a word. Not a word. If you don't include the religious documents that you're supposed to believe as the inerrant, inspired Word of God, the all-powerful creator of the universe. So it's a fraught subject. In other words, it's a fun subject. In a way, it's a fun subject. I hesitate to call it that because a lot of people have died in history because of this subject. But for us now, in our context, it's a fun debate. It's a perfect example of the kind of thing I always talk about on this channel, where no matter where you stand on the subject, this kind of a challenge to historical complacency, how do you know what you're telling me, is always fascinating. And it's a good discussion, so I'll leave a link to it. And then the final review is Katie Books, who reviews Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. And naturally, when you're reviewing Starship Troopers, the elephant in the room is going to be the movie. And I was stunned. I think Katie Books' video came before this year started. Like I said, this first Last Week in BookTube will include some older stuff, and then we'll do just what the week has to offer. So with any luck, next week's Last Week in BookTube will be shorter than this one, although you never know. But at the beginning of Katie Books' video on Starship Troopers, I was absolutely stunned to learn that he had never, as of 2022, seen the movie. And that as far as I can gather from the video, he still hasn't watched it. I don't understand that at all. The movie is an absolute brain-screwing masterpiece. You can't appreciate it if you watch little clips on YouTube. You have to watch the whole thing. And you have to watch it a few times. It's disturbing and dark and fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. The best thing that Cap Van Dien ever did. Anyway, his discussion of Starship Troopers is terrific, so I'll leave a link. And then we'll finish up with must views. If I hadn't done on that long peroration about Jesus, we'd be on time for this video at 20 minutes. But we'll finish up with must views. And again, I only have 3 videos. I would like to get to the point where I include only 3 videos for each of these categories so that these videos don't go on forever. But for must views, the first one that I want to mention is Gina Stanyer Books, where Gina Stanyer takes time out from talking about books to bake a cake. It's beguiling. Now, it's going to be more beguiling for me, I imagine, than it is for a lot of you, because I can't conceive of being able to bake a cake. I can't conceive of being able to do that. I can't even come close. I am still very much challenged in buying a cake at the bakery and safely getting it back here. So making a cake. But the video is utterly charming. And when it comes to that, when it comes to just charming, personal video content, I want to mention the Bookish Knitter, Sarah at the Bookish Knitter, who's doing weekly reading vlogs instead of a monthly vlog. And her weekly reading vlogs are great. They are great. They are rambling. They are this detail and that detail. Here's what here's why work is annoying me. I'm off work today. This is a holiday. I went out such and such a place and had zero self-control when it comes to buying a new book. Crafting. She is a crafter as well as a reader, and it makes sure to include details of crafting. All sorts of, this is just a wonderful visit with another reader. Just absolutely delightful. So I loved it. And then the last must view is a big one. It's a big profile thing. It's Ollie at CriminOlly did a video called "How to Be Successful on BookTube." Although it's all about a series of steps that you can do to increase the viewership on your channel. In the framework of Ollie having reached 20,000 subscribers in 15 months, fewer than 2 years. When, as you know, there are plenty of people on BookTube who haven't reached 1,000 subscribers in 6 years on BookTube. And Ollie's video is very, very good. It's very personable, very approachable. And it is aimed at exactly that. How do you increase your viewership? How do you grow the size of your channel? What do you do? What should you do to make that happen? Broken down into steps. I would imagine that his video is going to be invaluable for newcomers to BookTube who maybe have that as a goal. And the reason, the sort of but that you hear hovering over all of this summary is that I don't believe that anyone should have that as a goal. And also, there's a dichotomy in Ollie's video between the title of the video once you click on it and the thumbnail. Because those are two different things, right? Growing your subscriber count in a certain amount of time is different from being successful on BookTube. As Ollie, I think, would be the very first person to say. I don't think he was, in this video, he's not setting himself up as some sort of soulless carnival barker for the YouTube algorithm at all. He would be the first to say that what counts as success on BookTube is entirely up to you. It's an entirely personal thing. For a lot of people on BookTube, the numbers don't mean anything at all. Monetization doesn't mean anything at all. Subscriber count doesn't mean anything at all. Whether or not the algorithm notices you and picks you up, puts you a little closer to the daily featured page or whatnot, to send new subscribers flooding your way. To a lot of people, that doesn't mean anything at all. That's not even an ingredient in success. To a lot of people who are making BookTube videos, success is what they say in their BookTube newbie tag. I don't have anybody to talk to about books. I'd like to find new bookish friends. Well, you can do that with 100 subscribers. You can do that with 50 subscribers. And they will be real. Those people they'll connect with you on Voxer. They'll connect with you in person if you're close enough. They'll call you. They'll remember you. They'll remember how things are going in your life. You'll send things to each other. None of those things are perquisites of a high subscriber count. Those can happen at any subscriber count. And that can very much count as being successful on BookTube. So I loved Ollie's video. I loved especially the relief for me, on a personal level, the relief for me in having someone make how to succeed at BookTube, how to, really grow those numbers, really snag the algorithm video, when I don't have to hate it, when I don't hate the video. There's no possible construction in this or any other multiverse reality in which Ollie is that kind of person. He's a completely genuine, likable, nice, friendly person. So there's no way for me to turn him into that favorite imaginative creature of mine, the YouTube enemy. There's no way for me to do that. He's a YouTube friend. So instead, I got to pay attention to the advice in the video itself and what it means And especially the thing that worried me, the one thing that worried me, and that might worry him when he thinks about his own video, is how is it going to strike people not who are thinking about making a BookTube channel? Because if they're thinking about making a BookTube channel, they might take all of his advice right out of the starting gate. And who knows if it won't help them. I wasn't thinking so much about those people, the people who will find his video 2 years from now when they're thinking about making a BookTube video and find his advice very useful. Instead, I was thinking about all the BookTube people who are out there now already making videos and joking around with other creators and having long discussions in the comments field and whatnot, who don't have subscribers, who don't have a lot of subscribers, will never come to the attention of the algorithm, don't have the right kind of channel name or the right kind of thumbnail or the right kind of focus or the right kind of upload schedule or the right kind of video quality rotation or whatnot. They don't do any of that. Where I'm sure that you subscribe to a lot of those channels. Lord knows I do. I subscribe to hundreds of them. Where what their BookTube experience is they turn on the camera and talk a little about what they're reading, or what they're planning on reading, or what somebody else is reading. And then they smile and they say thanks. Maybe they give you a glimpse of their bunny rabbit or their dog or their cat, and then they leave. And the next time they feel like making a video like that, they do. I was thinking about those people because I don't want Ollie's video. The video is titled one thing. The thumbnail is titled How to Be Successful in BookTube. I don't want that thumbnail title to give any of those people the idea that they are not successful. I don't want it to drive them away from BookTube. Ollie, I think, would be the first person to say that everybody here is welcome, that your yardstick for what counts or doesn't as success will vary from person to person. He's talking about one specific thing, how to grow a big channel. And his advice is excellent for that. But all of you people who are out there who maybe don't have that as a goal, or maybe have that as a goal and it hasn't happened yet, I don't want his video to discourage you. I don't want his video to make you think that you are a failure. Because you have to keep in mind, one element that is not in any way stressed in his video, but that is really important, is luck. The YouTube algorithm cannot be gamed. Not completely. You can put yourself in the way of it. You can make content that you can gather is friendly to it. But what it does or doesn't do, whether or not it puts a video of yours closer to the main fire hose of viewership or not, a large part of that is luck. As I bet some of you who are BookTube creators will know. Where you're beetling along, you're not thinking about the algorithm at all, you're making video after video after video, suddenly one video out of nowhere pops. That was obviously not your intent. It obviously wasn't anything that you shaped the video to do. Leaving aside the element of luck, there's also just the question of yourself, of your own yardstick of success. I watch a lot of channels with fewer than 200 subscribers that I consider very successful because their viewers love them and they're having a ball. And the point that I don't want to speak for Ollie here, but the point that I want to make here is that I'm 99.9% sure that he would consider those channels successful too. He was mainly talking about growing a channel, making it, valuable in terms of monetization, making it valuable in terms of the reach, that sort of thing. It's a very, very interesting video. I'd love to know what all of you think about it. I imagine that a lot of people who are watching this video have watched it already. But I'll leave a link to it because it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about what it says, especially if you are a very small BookTube creator. What does it say about what you're doing week after week after week? I would consider that fascinating. The two elements that I want you to remember when you watch the video are, one, there's an element of luck involved. If there weren't, you could spend a year following Ollie's advice, and at the end of that year, you'd have 20,000 subscribers, and you almost certainly won't. And two, there's an element of your own heart is involved here. What do you consider a success on BookTube? And if you're hitting that, if you're getting that as a success, then put the rest of it out of your mind. But anyway, this video's gone on. This video's gone on quite long enough. This is 30 minutes when I want these to be much shorter than that. But that is Last Week in BookTube. Again, not at all meant to be comprehensive. I watched a lot more BookTube and YouTube than this. I've, in the past, done these last weeks in BookTube where I've included a segment about the broader YouTube world, even though the title of the video is Last Week in BookTube, just to give you a sense of some things that are out there that aren't BookTube that you might be interested in. I don't know if you want me to do that. I could do a PS where I do a couple of videos like that if you want. I can just hammer out the details here until we get a format that we really like. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up before it goes on much longer. 30 minutes, good Lord. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.